future, talk radio will actually educate, inspire, and make you think. The future is now. Topics and music that affect your life from Universal Broadcasting Network. Tune in at ubnradio.com.
I can hear it. I can hear it. The audience is growing. Dr. Judy here, Dr. Judy WTF with the Freud. And this is a call-in show, folks. So please do call in, 323-843-2826. And for those of you who are tuning in for the very first time, we are going to be doing a lot of shrinking and a lot of analyzing the cause of human psychopathology, and I should emphasize inorganic because we can't help what is genetic and organic. That's just kind of built in there. But we are going to be breaking down the cause of all inorganic psychopathology. The way I see it is predicated on human disconnect. And tonight's topic is fear of failure. So I want to start by saying that back in the early 2000s, I created a system of healing systems gone wrong. And anything that causes us pain, suffering, a feeling of being disjointed, a feeling of being disconnected from, is because we, from birth, need certain ingredients to life in order to have a healthy human psyche. If you would be so kind as to put the mind map up, I can show it and talk it. And so thank you very much. So if you look at the mind map, it is divided into 9 panels. And the top third of these 9 panels represent the past, childhood wounds, how they embed and how they encode in you. The middle third represents all of the chaos of what got encoded, misinformation, lies, information that's harmful to your mental psyche. The chaos is born out of that, and then people create what I call defense mechanisms. These defense mechanisms lock us into what I call a psychological prison, and they limit us. They limit our ability to grow because of this psychological prison and the nature of the defense mechanisms. We think they're protecting us, and sometimes they do. The problem is sometimes they smother us, sometimes they choke the living life force out of us and leave us in the dark, so to speak. So the middle section of the mind map represents what we need to do to take out the psychological poison. And so in order to move on and reboot the system, which is the last piece of the mind map, panel number 789, we have to go through a step-by-step mind map healing process, which literally traces wounds of childhood, which there are 5 of: physical abuse, sexual abuse, there is neglect, smothering, and then there is emotional abuse. So those are the 5 wounds of childhood, and it's really, really difficult to get out of childhood unscathed. I don't know anybody who has a white picket fence childhood exactly. However, some of us get more emotional goodies than others, and some of us then have a hardier start in life, and then therefore we're more able to tolerate life's slings and arrows, so to speak. So going back to today's topic, fear of failure. Well, that's a very broad topic, and of course we're going to apply it to various situations, and people, please feel free to call in and we will talk about your fear of failure, because ultimately the show is about you, and the show is about your getting on the couch with your emotional ouch so that we can source it, see where the pain comes from, see what you do with the pain, see how you encode the pain, and then understand why this WTF, which I call the Freud, which is a repetitive cycle whereby you fall into patterns that you repeat over and over again, not because you're stupid, but mainly because you're unconscious, and you follow these patterns so that you can basically have a happier ending to a bad story. But it usually doesn't work that way, because this loop just keeps looping and doesn't really get the flow off of the past, and it just keeps reverberating into your current situation. I want to talk a little bit about a psychologist. His name is Martin Seligman. And he had a concept called learned helplessness. And I want to read a little bit about it. Learned helplessness came out of his interest in depression. So Seligman and his colleagues discovered that the experimental conditioning protocol they used in dogs led to behaviors which were unexpected. And these conditioned dogs did not respond to opportunities to learn to escape from unpleasant situations. His further findings found that human beings are also behaving that way. They behave helpless in situations even though there may be an escape route possible. And even if they have the power to change this unpleasant circumstance. And he saw similarity in depressed patients and found that in certain situations, people perceive that they don't have any control over their situation, and they have no control over the outcome of the situation. So it reminds me a little bit about a phrase that I say a lot on the show, and I say a lot in my book, Be the Cause, Healing Human Disconnect, which is that childhood is a hostage situation because we don't have control over who our parents are. We do not have any control over our environment. And in a way, it is an unfortunate laboratory for many where there is that sense of learned helplessness. So where does it all start? It starts from the cause. And when I say cause, I mean the blueprint of who we are. And who is the blueprint of who we are? It's always our family of origin, usually our primary caregivers, mother, father, other people who are involved in taking care of us. And sometimes they set up conditions where we read their messages and we try to understand how we're doing according to those messages. And according to what we're reading there, and this reading starts taking place even on a pre-verbal level, meaning before you're able to talk, before you're able to formulate ideas, words, and so on. So in this pre-verbal stage, you're already learning things. You're learning who you are in the world. You're learning to see yourself in the eyes of your mother, your primary caregiver. So you're getting feedback. So if you cry, your mother might respond lovingly and might respond in a nurturing way, or perhaps she might turn away from you, or perhaps she might even leave you locked up in the room and let you cry it out, which is a very, very popular child-rearing technique that was suggested by Dr. Ferber and the Ferber method, which was not a good way to raise children because it was parent-centered. It did not take into consideration the infant needs of the child. So pretty soon, if a baby is getting cues and clues that they're not being responded to, then they start feeling helpless. The locus of control becomes not in their hands any longer. And even though they're obviously not thinking these concepts and complicated terms, they're still feeling that the relationship between themselves and primary caregiver is not one that is synergistic, not one that feeds the baby, not one that engages the mother and engages the baby in a relationship. So let's take the idea of neglect. Okay, one of the wounds of childhood. So what happens if a baby is neglected? What is the biggest fear there? Fear of failure. What are they going to fail at? Well, the first thing they want to succeed at, obviously, is making the connection to the primary caregiver. And if they're already failing to make that connection, or rather, if mom is failing to make the connection, and unfortunately, the baby always thinks that they're at fault. The child thinks that they're at fault. The child thinks that because they're not being attended to, because they're not being looked in the eyes or touched, that there might be something wrong with them. So there's a sense in the child that they're failing at something. So there's the blueprint for failure. And then this expands and expands and expands, and it builds up this sense of learned helplessness, that no matter what they do, if they cry, there's no response. If they shut down, then they get deeper into the hole and still no response. If they start throwing objects, they might even be hit and punished, which goes into the physical abuse piece of it. So no matter what, the first line of success or failure is the success or failure of the relationship with a primary caregiver. So this goes back to a big topic that a lot of people call in about, which is the narcissistic injuries of childhood. And I want to explain a little bit more about that because the term narcissism is really thrown around quite a bit. And what I mean by that is a system gone wrong, a system whereby the mother is supposed to nurture the baby. The mother is supposed to be a positive, loving feedback loop to the baby, measuring and rewarding the success of that infant child. And if that is not present, then that child will not have a really strong inner core sense of self. And again, can you see that the locus of control will not form within the child? It will always be this kind of an outside thing of, what am I doing wrong? What can I do more to please you? And this then translates into relationships later in life. So again, this is a call-in show. So people, please call in 323-843-2826 and get on the couch, and we could talk about your fears of failure in various aspects of life. So again, a really, really broad topic and a very, very common reason people come to therapy. They come to therapy because they, for example, want to start a new venture. Maybe they want to go back to school and they want to get a degree in engineering. However, they're scared. Why are they scared? Why would anybody be scared to go back to school and get a degree? Well, maybe they're afraid that they're going to get a bad grade, or they're afraid that the teacher is going to criticize them, or maybe they're afraid that after all they won't be able to go the whole 9 yards and complete their course. So what's going on here? So why are they going in with the idea that they can possibly fail? Why aren't they driven by success? Well, I think that a fear of failure is a part of our it's a part of our survival skills. You know, we should be scared to stand on a cliff because maybe we'll fall off. We should be afraid to touch fire because maybe we'll get burned. And speaking of fires, I do want to shout out to everybody who is going through this disaster in the Valley, Los Angeles area. A lot of homes are burning down. A lot of people are being displaced. And I just want to say to all of you, if you're experiencing extreme stress and distress, we have a team of people at the Psychological Healing Center, and we would really like to help. We'd like to reduce our rates for people who are experiencing PTSD, because the point is that when we're afraid, when we feel that nobody has our back, it's very, very important to have a solid support system. So also my voice is kind of raw for two reasons. Number one, I live in the Valley. The Psychological Healing Center is in the Valley, Sherman Oaks, and we've all been breathing in a lot of really, really bad air. So please bear with my voice. Thank you very much. And so going back to this concept of this person who wants to go back to school, but yet he or she might have in the back of his or her mind, ow, I'm going to now expose how stupid I am or how incompetent I am. So let's go back to panels 1, 2, and 3 and trace this causal domino effect and how it arrives in a negative core belief like I'm stupid or I'm incompetent. So going back to panel 1, the wounds of childhood, what if this particular person didn't get attended to very often? What if the particular person, as they were growing up, got attended to but only with criticism? What if they were shamed and blamed and made fun of and told that they were stupid and told that they were incompetent? Do you see how that blueprint would then create a reaction in the amygdala, which is panel 2, and create a sense of anxiety, a sense of maybe hopelessness? And do you see how the encoded information can turn into something like, I'm not good enough. I'm not competent enough. I will never be able to please anyone. So when you look at the blueprint of this, you can now understand why that person wouldn't want to sign up for the courses. And that person now is possibly in a state of learned helplessness, because many times over, the message that they aren't good enough has been delivered and reinforced, and now they're in a new circumstance called school, and they're afraid of what? Of course, they're afraid that the same thing is going to happen, and that's called projection. And that's what we do when we don't know if the new situation we're going into is going to be any different than the old situation. So what we do is we project into this new situation that it's going to be just like our family of origin, that the teachers and the students and everybody in the whole faculty will be mirroring and setting an equal bar to the original blueprint or home atmosphere, which is the low bar that they now take into the situation, thinking that they're going to be criticized and shamed and blamed. So some people will be so scared of the situation that they'll actually think, well then, I'm not going to sign up for school, forget this. And they may even bow out. They may even bow out the first sign that they have a low grade. They might even drop out because they're scared that that low grade will show up on a report card. So rather than have it show up, they'll just bow out so that they can not be shown up to be that person that is stupid or incompetent. So are you beginning to see how important it is to really trace the cause of these issues? Because if we don't, then we're back in this what the Freud situation. We project into the new environment these negative core beliefs that we carry from childhood. We project onto other people that they're going to be looking at us with judging, critical eyes in the same sense that our family of origin did. And can you see how that would definitely put a damper on things? That makes sense, doesn't it? And please do call in with your emotional ouch. I know it is before the holidays and everybody is taking off, and it would be great to make a connection with the people that I know write in and listen to. And thank you very much, everybody, for all of your different forms of communication. We have a growing audience of people cross-culturally across the world, and it's really an honor for me. It's an honor for the staff to make connections with people in Iceland, in Italy, in Oman, in Thailand, and I think we have a call-in, so please get on the couch and connect. Hi.
Hi.
Who is this, please?
This is Mary from Florida.
Hi, Mary. How you doing?
Good. I wasn't able to get on my iPad. Every time I tried to get on to get in to hear your topic and what you're talking about, it shut down. So
Okay.
I just decided to call.
Okay, I'm glad you did. You know the topic of the day?
It's no, tell me.
Okay, it's fear of failure, and it's a very broad topic. And I've been talking about the blueprint for the fear of failure, which is how we are treated in the first few years of life. And if our parents give us judgmental comments, critical looks, if we are ignored, if we're verbally abused, then we develop negative core beliefs that then interfere with our ability to take risks and move forward. And then the fear of failure becomes very prominent. So that's what we've been talking about, and how might that apply in your life, Mary?
Yes, that does apply in my life. It's funny how you were just talking, and I've never related things to my father,
Okay.
but I've always related things to my mother, thinking, well, you know, she always tried to protect us and everything. But actually, my father was, an alcoholic, and he did things so, I saw them, like hold a gun to my mother's head
Wow.
that was loaded,
Okay.
and then go outside and shoot the gun off and hold a knife to her throat, and things like that, she had to tell me later on in life that, how can you not remember these things, But I guess I blocked it out.
Okay, so I just want to address that blocking out phenomenon. This is very, very common in trauma, and watching your parents engage in this abusive manner is a trauma. It's child abuse. It's reportable. Children should not be around these kinds of scenes. And so what trauma does to the brain is that it creates what is known in our profession a phenomenon called splitting. Okay? And splitting is simply that. I don't want to be here. This is too hard. Are you able to hear me? Do you have anything going on in the background that you have to shut off? Can you hear me okay? Okay.
Yeah,
Okay. So when we're traumatized, then we tend to dissociate. We tend to split. And so the splitting creates a safety zone in that you don't remember, and it also wipes out the memories. So it's not surprising that your mother is telling you these things and you're telling her, I don't remember. Okay, so how do you think this might play into your life and who you are today, and maybe extrapolate it into the topic of fear of failure?
I know that every time I'm going to be with a group of people, I get extremely nervous because I really think about how I got to position myself so that I'm sitting in a corner or standing in a corner, so I'm looking at the people, and I don't have people, so they're behind me, and so I need to have an escape route, and I'm already pre-planning ways to politely get out, and sometimes that fails miserably, and sometimes it can be as simple as just being with a bunch of women for tea or something, or coffee or whatever.
Okay. All right.
But I have to know that I can leave.
And doesn't that make sense from a blueprint point of view that you were in extreme jeopardy? You don't know, that gun might have fired off and killed you for all, maybe that's what's been a concern of yours as well. Of course, an unconscious one because you split off and forgot a lot of this material. So it makes sense that your world, according to your blueprint, mom and dad, was a very dangerous world. And so therefore, you would then do what with the new crowd of people coming into your life? What do you think that you would project onto them?
That I was the reject in the crowd or the group, just, and I end up being that too. I do. I notice that I end up being the type of person where it's like, oh, Mary, you're coming along so well, you're doing so well, and it's always like I'm either pampered or treated like almost like a child, where they gotta assist me or help me. I don't know how this happens. It just does.
Well, okay.
And sometimes I'll be very strong. I'll be a very strong person.
Okay.
And yet, time passes, and meeting with the friends and stuff like that. Time passes, and they've got to help me, and I'm like, oh my gosh, it's happened again.
Well, I'm trying to picture you in a room full of people, and I talk a lot about how parents set the bar. So you're in this situation, and you're fearing that maybe people are not that safe in general. So the fear is that people are not that safe, and the fear of failure is that you don't know what to do about it. There it goes again, that learned helplessness, that you're trapped in a situation, you don't have an escape route, even though you do, but in your mind you don't think that you do, because childhood is a hostage situation and you're still stuck in that phase of fearing that you can't get out, that there's nobody that has your back, because this was what you had growing up. You had nobody that really had your back. Does it make sense to you?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, it does. It does. And I don't know if my mother trying to abort me, when I was in the womb, and I don't know if that, because I heard you talk about, I've been watching your YouTube, if that has something to do with, you said they sense things. And I don't know if you sense things in the womb, and you're not wanted. I was the child that wasn't wanted.
Were your parents
so
married?
I don't know.
Were they married?
Yeah, they were married, but right after the first child, my mother realized she had married a alcoholic, probably cheating, gambling, Navy guy.
Okay.
And
all right.
she didn't want another child,
so,
and I was it.
Okay, so look at all the fear involved. Her fear of failure to pick the right man. Her fear of failure to create a family that's functional. And now, what did you represent? You represented the child that was going to entrap her further into a horrible, horrible relationship. Okay? And so the message that you're not wanted, that you should have been an abortion, look how profoundly horrific that is in terms of a core belief. I should have been not even born. I'm not even welcome in this world. I should have been an abortion. That's about as low as a person can feel about themselves, correct? And this is a message that your mother ingrained in you because she told you so, did she not? She actually told you that she wished she would have aborted you. Years later. Okay. Okay. All right. So what kinds of fears do you think this created in you growing up later on in your maybe in other areas of your life, at work? By the way, do you have children? Do you have a family?
I have one child by the first marriage, and married. My husband and I are married later, where he has 3, but they were teenagers and they stayed with the mother.
Okay.
So I would say my one child, and that's what got me to watch your YouTubes. I was desperately searching for passive aggressive.
Okay.
Because I don't know what I've done to my daughter that's caused her to be so passive aggressive that I recognized it in your YouTube where I get sick. I mean, I get dangerously sick where I have just wanted to stay in bed for days and days. I've gone through that now several times in my life.
Okay.
And I'm recovering now again. And now another incident happened where we're not going to speak to each other. We're not going to see each other. And I'm doing all I can to stay stable.
You mean to your daughter? You're not going to speak to your daughter?
We're not speaking.
You're not speaking.
It's mutual.
Okay. And why? What happened? What was the disconnect?
My daughter has always done things that are similar to what was mentioned on your YouTube, which is, like the things like I'm coming, and you wait in the car for half an hour to an hour while she's coming. She's 43,
Okay.
and
Okay.
it's always an excuse.
Mm-hmm.
She's always late, always, and then she's always saying whatever to me. I mean, these little clues.
Right. So, as I like to say, I like to teach people to think like a shrink. And whenever we see symptoms, we can begin to say to ourselves, they're communicating something. So they can't say it in direct words, but they're going to do it indirectly. Okay? So what might be her fear?
I know that she, it's just like you said, they don't want to work. She has this incredible fear to go to work and not succeed.
Okay.
Just to the point where she sabotages every chance to get a job when I try to help her.
Okay, so let's work backwards. Let's go back to the blueprint. So was she judged, blamed, shamed, criticized? Was she given the necessary tiny baby step support system ladder, so to speak, to climb up that ladder of success by you? And that was your first husband, yes?
I was caught when she was born, I was in I call it a cult. It was Jehovah's Witnesses. I was there 11 years. So, I mean, I always was, talking about the end of the world.
Oh,
so,
okay.
I mean, I got out of it. So, the impression she would get would be, the talk in the Kingdom Hall and all that, that was the end of the world. The end of the world is coming. The end of the world. Knock on the doors, tell people. And I got to the point where I couldn't take it anymore. I couldn't take the always bad news. There's never good news. You got to tell people the bad news.
So speaking of learned helplessness, this is a huge example of it, don't you think? Where you're communicating to your daughter that the end of the world is going to come. So after a while, can you see how she might be thinking, whatever, okay? And so maybe it starts with the fear of, oh my God, the end of the world is going to come, adrenaline, and then after a while, you become that unbelievable mother of, well, is the end of the world going to come? And I'm still waiting for the end of the world. And what was the first thing that you said to me that she does in a passive aggressive way?
She makes me wait.
Thank you. Okay. So she's been waiting for the end of the world, as you said it would come, okay, in anxiety. So do you see how unconsciously she's doing a WTF? Can you see that? She's making you wait.
Yeah, gosh.
All right.
Even though it's been years? I mean,
yes, because she's not conscious of this. Because if she was conscious of this, she would say, Mom, I'm very, very angry at you. She'd have one of those conscious, peaceful healing dialogues, which, by the way, is up on my website, psychologicalhealingcenter.com. You can pull off a copy of the Peaceful Healing Dialogue, and it's up there. And so right now, Mary, I'm teaching you how to think like a shrink, because what she wants you to feel, see, she's trying to project in you to relieve her own anxiety and her own fears. She's projecting in you her fears and her anxiety of waiting. So what does she do? She makes you wait. And then you become anxious and you become irritated and so on.
Walking on eggshells, like
Right.
was said.
Right. So
Constantly where I'm getting sick. I get sick over it. And then when I speak up for myself, she screams at me.
And what do you say?
43 years old.
What do you say? When you speak up for yourself, what do you say?
I'll say, why did you do that in the house? Perfect example, something that just happened. I was waiting for her. I said, all right, I'm going to go out. She goes, go outside, turn on the car. It's a little cool. The baby's going to need a warm car. So I come back in. I said, okay, what luggage do you want me to take? And because we're visiting people. And she said, I have the back of the van up. I got to put the luggage in. What would you like me to take? And now, instead of standing at the door, she's sitting down at the couch, and she's talking to family. And I said, Tracy, just tell me, what is it?
Okay, so I want to, let's stop and shrink this thing, okay? Is that all right with you? Okay,
sure.
So we're talking about something unconscious back in the day, starting with the message that the world is going to end, and she's waiting, and she's full of anxiety about this. And now you're in a different phase of life, and it's a new context. The situation is in a new context. And so the missing piece of this is the entire system gone wrong, because that system went wrong not on that day when you were putting stuff into the car or whatever and she was waiting. This system went wrong a long time ago. So when you express your frustration to her about that moment, what didn't happen is her dialogue with you from years ago saying, Mom, I'm so angry at you that you put this in my head. Mom, I'm so angry at you that you made me wait and wait and wait and wait. Okay? And I don't even know how to explain this to you. So here's how I'm going to explain it to you. I'm going to make you wait. See how that feels. Okay? So then that action, that unconscious action, turns into what we label as passive aggressive. But again, if you look at this whole system gone wrong, you could see the etiology or the cause of this and the trickle down of it. And here you are getting angry at her for waiting when she didn't even clean out her feelings about how angry she is at you for telling her to wait for the end of the world to come. Do you see that?
I see it, but why can't she see that the world didn't come to an end? She's an adult now, and we talked over how Jehovah's Witnesses are wrong in their beliefs.
Well,
why?
Yeah, she can probably see it. Everything that you're saying is very logical, but the psyche is not logical. That's why we call it psychological, the logic of the psyche, and emphasis on the psycho because sometimes it sounds crazy, doesn't it? That she's making you wait now, and that, years ago when you were telling her this, she might be really angry at you that you were involved in this particular cult and that you exposed her to this particular cult, okay, which brought her into a hostage situation. So she might have this fear of failure to be able to really communicate with you and to be understood and heard by you. And this, again, goes back to a multi-generational thing where you too were in a hostage situation. You weren't in a cult, but you were in a hostage situation because you were with parents that were abusive. You had a father who had a gun to your mother's head, and then there were shots being heard and so on and so forth. And so multi-generationally, you guys were all in a hostage situation. It's just that yours was different than hers. So can you see how this kind of languaging, this passive-aggressive languaging came about? Can you see how her fear of not being heard and understood and her fear of being held hostage to this cult that she didn't even sign up for? Do you see how all that fits together?
Yeah, when I think about her dad, who was not in it,
Mm-hmm.
and I took Christmas away, I didn't want Christmas in the house.
Okay.
It would make him furious, and then we weren't allowed to have birthdays, and so I would secretly be happy that he would take care of that part of it, but outwardly,
but you
I
couldn't
would
show it
my
because
anger.
no, you couldn't because you were in the cult. You were in the Jehovah's Witness cult. Okay, so her fear, if you look at fear of failure, her failure to have a proper childhood, her failure to have regular things like birthdays or Christmas or Thanksgiving dinners or, anything like that, that was off the table. And so who took it off the table?
Me.
You're being punished.
Yeah.
Do you see that? She doesn't know how to say to you, Mom, I'm really, really hurt and angry, and I have a fear that I've lost control of my life because you kind of put me in I call it the double dungeon of darkness, okay? You put me in this horrible double dungeon of darkness. I can't get out of it, and so I'm really, really angry at you and very, very hurt, and I fear that I'm not going to have control over my life. I fear that I won't be able to have my communications understood, and this is the only primitive way I can do it. So I'm going to show you how angry and hurt I am by making you very, very angry and frustrated, just like I was for many, many years. Get it, Mom?
Wow, that might be why, in the heat of her screaming at me once she got outside in the car, she called her alcoholic husband she's trying to divorce and said, my psycho mother has done it again. And I'm
Okay.
like,
All right. So looking at it through this lens of perception, what did you do that she thought was psycho mothering or psycho mother behavior?
I pointed out to her what she wanted me to do, and I didn't do it in the order she wanted me to do it in. So, and then her passive aggressive kicks in, and the whole thing flips over as if I did something to her in that incident.
Right.
And she's so furious with me that she couldn't control me.
There we go.
That she lost it.
Yes. So everything was out of her control, you see? So when you give indication that she's out of control again and not doing things in the order that she needs it to be done, do you see how unconscious this all is? That's why it sounds so crazy. And we're looking at it straight up going like, my daughter's passive aggressive and, she's behaving so crazily. I'm saying we're not crazy, we're made crazy. And it's not that you woke up to make her crazy. It's just that you came from a system gone wrong, and your family came from a system gone wrong, and so on and so forth. And so as we begin to study these layers, and including cultural layers, I don't know your culture. What culture are you from?
You mean, I don't know, it's debatable, Irish, French, more French, my maiden name. Is that what you mean?
Yeah, because we also carry cultural wounds, okay? We're wounded on so many different layers. And so I know I have another call coming in, but I want you to understand that our cracked lens of perception gets cracked because the damage is done in the early years and the rest of the stuff gets played out in the here and now. So please be in touch with my team or me, and we'll straighten this out for you, okay? So, Mary, thank you for calling in, And there's a lot more to be revealed here, but you get the drift of connecting these dots. Yes?
Yeah, for the first time, I do.
Okay. All right. Thank you. And just
Thank you.
you're welcome. My pleasure. Thanks for calling in. Okay, you're on the couch with your emotional ouch about fear of failure. Did that person leave? Okay, sorry. Oh, call back. Very cool. Okay.
Hi,
Hi, who's this?
Deidre. I would like to talk to Dr. Judy.
Hey, Deidre, you're talking to Dr. Judy. How you doing?
I'm fine. How are you?
I'm good, thank you. Other than my voice, I'm great. Great to hear from you. So tell me what question you might have about fear of failure.
I definitely have that fear of failure. Been looking at your YouTube videos and came from a narcissist father. It seems like a codependent mother.
Okay.
I'm the youngest of 4.
Okay.
And I was always shamed, put down. I'm an achiever now. I've been a supervisor on every job I've ever been on, and I've been on 3. But yet I did not graduate high school, and I am afraid to return back to college.
Okay.
I am afraid to fail.
Okay, so let's shrink it. Let's connect the dots and go back to the cause. You mentioned narcissistic father, did you say? Codependent mother? Yes?
Yes.
Okay, so narcissistic father means it's all about him, right? Esteeming him. So there's not much left over for you, is there? There's not much brownie points and handouts of good job for you because he's the center of attention. And then you've got a codependent mother. And who is her concern? Do you think her number one concern is you or the narcissist?
The narcissist.
Of course, because he wouldn't have married her if he would have prioritized you over him. He would have kicked her to the curb. So she had to be a good girl, a good wife, and so she had a fear of abandonment already built in, and he already sniffed that out and decided to hook up with her because she was good narcissistic supply bait. Okay, so let's study the system. She made him the center of attention. You got demeaned, devalued, whatever happened, either directly or indirectly. You didn't get reinforced for your accolades, for your achievements. And you said that you were also verbally abused. Is that correct?
Oh, yes.
Okay.
Shamed.
Like what?
My inner core is damaged.
Okay. So you've been listening to enough of these videos to understand the importance of knowing your negative core belief, correct?
Correct.
Okay, so what do you think your negative core belief is after all this damage?
Unworthy.
Unworthy. Okay. I am unworthy. If that is
Not
your
good enough.
not good, I am not good enough. So if that is what you're led by, then why would you want to put yourself in a situation where you can expose yourself and not be good enough? So wouldn't it make sense that you would want to avoid school? You would want to avoid grades? You would want to avoid feedback?
Yes.
Okay, so when I talk about core beliefs, I also call them negative limiting core beliefs. And so do you think that what your parents communicated to you verbally and non-verbally was based on truth, or was it based on their dysfunction?
Based on their dysfunction.
And yet the baby of you, the child of you, does what with it?
I believed it.
That's correct. That's right. There's the psychovirus. It goes into your head. It goes into your belief system. It goes into what I call the psycho DNA of you. And then it limits you. You know, there was an experiment with fleas. It was really interesting. They put fleas in a jar, and then they put the top on the jar and punched little holes in it so they could breathe. And then the fleas learned that the jar, they could only jump so high, and then they hit their bodies on the jar, at the top of the lid of the jar, And then after a while, the experimenter took the lid off. Guess what happened to the fleas?
They still only jump that high.
That's you. That's you. Okay? That's you. So you only will jump that high because at the core of you, you believe that you're not worthy. You don't believe it. You don't believe that you're capable. You don't believe that you can achieve. You don't believe that even if you did achieve, people could recognize your worth. You don't believe it. So why try? And somehow, good for you that you were able to kind of break out of that limiting core belief and become a supervisor.
Yes.
And then the next step would be taking another risk and exposing yourself to what? Potentially what?
What else lies ahead?
Right.
What else can I achieve?
Yeah, but there's a danger there. Don't you see that if you don't make it, then it's going to activate what?
The feelings that I've always felt that I'm not good enough.
That's right. That's right. And there's that lid. See? The lid. There it is again. The lid.
Yes.
So I want you
it
to...
happened.
Yeah, it's actually happening. So I know we do we have a few more minutes left? 5 minutes. Okay. So we have a few more minutes. I'm going to be shrinking a tune soon about the concept of fear of failure, but I want you to see the entire, connect the dots of what you've told me about your narcissistic father, your codependent mother, the limitations in the family, your inability to really be heard and seen, the limitations in the family of what they believed you to be and how you translated it and bought into it. You bought into the lie. You bought into it. You made it to mean that you're not worthy. And so you live your life just like the fleas do in the glass jar, and you're limited by that lid. And the lid is what your parents placed on top of you. The lid that you're not competent, you're not good enough. You don't deserve any more than that. Okay? So I suggest to you to get a copy of my book, Be the Cause, Healing Human Disconnect, because that'll really help you connect the dots. And by the way, everybody, my video is coming out, I hope in a month or so. You'll be able to buy the 9-panel mind map video journey to healing that I conduct, and hopefully it'll be all edited and available to everybody by at least the beginning of next year. So again, your name is Deidre, is that correct?
Correct.
Thank you so much for calling in, and be in touch with me and the team, and we can blow the lid off of that negative core belief. I know we can do it. We've done it with literally thousands of people. And thank you for calling in, and I'm going to try to shrink a tune in a very fast way. Okay, so.
Thank you.
Okay, my pleasure. Okay, so this tune is by Linkin Park, Play in the End. Okay, so here we go. One thing I don't know why, it doesn't even matter how hard you try. Keep that in mind. I designed this rhyme to explain in due time. There's the helplessness. It doesn't even matter how hard you try because it's not going to work out for you anyway. You're a failure. All I know, time is a valuable thing. Watch it fly by as the pendulum swings. Watch it count down to the end of the day. The clock ticks life away. It's futile. It's hopeless. It's time is going to go by and nothing's going to amount to anything. It's so unreal. Didn't look out below. Watch the time go right out the window. Trying to hold on. Didn't even know I wasted it all just to watch you go. So here's a person who's trying to hang on to somebody or something, and they wasted all their time because they had probably a fear of abandonment, and they waited, and then the time flew out the window. I kept everything inside, and even though I tried, it all fell apart. What it meant to me will eventually be a memory of a time when I tried so hard. So this person has no locus of control. Everything is designated to how the other will treat them. So there is a fear of failure to make it in a relationship, and that the other person is going to basically dump them. I tried so hard and got so far, but in the end it doesn't even matter. I had to fall to lose it all, but in the end it doesn't even matter. One thing I know, I don't know why, it doesn't even matter how hard you try. Keep that in mind. I designed this rhyme to remind myself how I tried so hard, but to what avail, right? In spite of the way you were mocking me, acting like I was part of your property, remembering all the times you fought with me, reminds me of the hostage situation. I'm part of your property? I'm surprised I got so far with all the limitations. Things aren't the way they were before. You wouldn't even recognize me anymore, so maybe the person's grown or maybe they've grown bitter. Not that you knew me back then, but it all comes back to me in the end. So maybe they're taking some form of responsibility, but sure as hell a lot of time has gone by now. You kept everything inside, and even though I tried, it all fell apart. What it meant to me will eventually be a memory of a time when I tried so hard. Well, it seems like they were trying really hard. The other person wasn't really trying hard. This show has been about fear of failure. So apparently this person has a fear that they weren't effectual at keeping the relationship. They were not effectual and they failed. So thank you so much for tuning in. For the people in the Valley, Los Angeles area, please keep safe. Be proactive. If you're in the line of fire, literally, then proactively get out if you feel that you're under threat. And make sure that you hydrate and wear masks and have plenty of food and shelter and reach out to your loved ones. And please, for those of you who can offer up aid in the form of money, in the form of shelter, please do, because ultimately it's about caring and sharing and extending yourself so that we could make our world, as difficult as it is, a little bit sweeter and a little bit kinder. So thank you for tuning in to Dr. Judy WTF with the Freud.